Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Alice Robb is the author of Don't Think, Dear, on Loving and Leaving Ballet. Alice has written for Vanity Fair, The Washington Post, The Atlantic, and The New Republic, among other publications. Her first book, Why We Dream, was recommended by places like The New Yorker, The New York Times, Today, Vogue, Time, and The Guardian, and has been translated into 17 foreign languages. Welcome, Alice. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have you. Okay, can you please tell listeners about your beautiful memoir?
Yeah, so my book is called Don't Think, Dear, on Loving and Leaving Ballet, and it is in part a memoir about my time as a student at the School of American Ballet. It's also about 4 of my classmates who I started with at SAB when we were all 9 years old and our lives all went in different directions. And it's also a feminist interrogation of the ballet world and ballet culture.
I love that you admit right away that you're like stalking all these people on Instagram. It's like, you're like, but then I feel like it's okay because I have a picture of us all together. So it's not really stalking because I know them. I like just your whole like interior monologue and rationalization. That was very relatable.
I mean, that was the seed of this book. One of the seeds was social media stalking. I talk about it in the book, but there were years when I was running away from ballet, trying not to think about it. It was all sort of too painful. But one thing I could not stop doing was stalking my old classmates on Instagram. So this book was really just a big extension of that. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, you start out by showing us how much like grit and determination you have, that you don't give up applying for the School of American Ballet. And you said forever, like being associated with rain, and the whole city was like on its knees because of 9/11. And that was right when you got your lifelong dream came true. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was definitely more, whatever little bits of early success I had were more about hard work than about talent. I just really wanted to be a dancer and just kept applying for the school and kind of maybe ignoring some of the signs that this was not going to be the easiest path for me. But
still, I mean, I might want to be a ballet dancer. There is no matter how hard I worked, I'm not going to be a ballet dancer. You know? So I feel like you had to, certainly not at the level that you were doing it. So I feel like you're underplaying your talent. It might not be like...
Well, I mean, that's kind of like one of the things this book is about is that most of us are not going to be ballet dancers, but so many little girls pass through a phase of wanting to be a dancer. I mean, almost in the same way that girls want to be like Cinderella or a fairy princess. And there's just so many, you start at such a young age before you really know how you're going to develop. So there's so many girls who are devoting a huge amount of their childhood. I mean, for me, it was, hours and hours every week, plus summer intensives and, stretching at home while I watch TV, and just kind of so much commitment. And the reality is, for the vast majority of even teenagers who've made it pretty far, it's not going to be their career.
True.
Yeah.
Well, most things we do as kids are not going to be our lifelong careers. Like there are very few things that start that early and just like keep going.
Yeah. Well, I've heard from people who, pursued acting or different sports, even some like former aspiring academics, and anyone with a kind of, difficult dream. Yeah.
True. Yeah. You also wrote a lot about the effect of dance on body image and your body, and even what it was like, not being in control of your bones, which was such an interesting way to say that. You were like, I could be in control of my food and my body, but not my bones. I was like, whoa, I've never thought about my bones like that before.
That's probably healthy. Yeah. I mean, the standards of ballet are just so incredibly specific. I mean, people think of what's a ballet dancer, quote unquote, supposed to look like. They think, oh, they're skinny, but it's just so much more than that. And we had to think about, the ratio of our torso to our legs, of, the width of our hip bones, the length of the neck. I mean, I had one friend who was told that her shins were too long. And I mean, there's just, someone else told that her neck was too short. There's just, these are things that they're just genetic. There's just very little you can do about them. But of course, we would try to compensate, like maybe your neck would look longer if you were super skinny, things like that. So it's all a little fucked up.
Yeah. Well, you also explained that part of it had to do with, the sort of the patriarchy, if you will, or like the masculine, the men. I mean, I don't even have to say it like that. It also has to do with the men who are involved, and from Balanchine to Peter Martins and all of the detrimental effects that having sort of abusive men at the helm, like of this coterie of women, what that could do.
Yeah. I mean, ballet is a world that is in some ways very female. I mean, the vast majority of students, especially young students, are girls. It was a very gendered world as well. I mean, thinking specifically, there are tiny bits of change, but my book is largely about ballet culture in the 2000s. But, boys and girls are always in separate classes. At SAB, boys all got to attend for free, whereas girls had to pay. And then, so boys were this like kind of treated as this special, scarce resource. And then meanwhile, at the top, I mean, the vast majority of choreographers were and still are men. Women are trained more to join the corps de ballet, which is where the job is to look like everyone else, like, a dozen swans all doing the same thing. So it doesn't exactly lend itself to nurturing your creativity. And then, yeah, I mean, there's a history of like dictatorial male directors who control every aspect of the dancers' lives, who, marry their dancers who are usually much younger. So it's really from top to bottom.
Oh my gosh. Tell me what it was like reconnecting with the girls from your class.
I mean, it really became, so this book went through so many different phases as I was writing it. When I first had the idea, I thought it was going to be much less personal, much more like academic. Like my first book was like much more straightforwardly journalism. And I thought this book was going to be like a group biography of, 4 famous women dancers from history. Then I added in my own story and I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. And then the final stage was I wanted to kind of expand it out for me and include my classmates. And I think that was really the thing that gave it the book for me. Like, that was the most meaningful part for me. And it was incredibly validating because to hear my classmates' stories, because I kind of had this, before I started working on the book, so just to, I quit ballet when I was 15. I'm 31 now. So I haven't done ballet in a really long time. And I kind of felt a little bit almost embarrassed that ballet still had such a hold on me and on my psyche. And, I think I still, when I started the book, maybe a little to a lesser extent now, would like, if I ever went to the ballet, I would feel sort of jealous of the dancers. And I still kind of had internalized the ballet standards of, what's a perfect body. And when I started talking to my classmates, some of whom had also quit ballet at the same time as me, and I heard how much ballet was still impacting them, that's what gave me the confidence that like, this is a story worth telling. And I wasn't just like a weirdo for still thinking about ballet.
No, I mean, it's such a formative piece of your life. I mean, how can you not think about it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't beat yourself up. No,
I
Oh my gosh. Well, how did they all feel about revisiting this?
It's interesting also that I worked on the book over the course of a few years. So I was able to actually like see things change in people's lives, both the kind of external realities and also how we were all thinking about things. I mean, I think we were all, struggling with a lot of the same things, but I also think so it was kind of an interesting period that we were all, talking about this, like from sort of late 20s to early 30s. And I think as we became like firmer in our adult identities, some of the ballet sort of residue was falling away a bit. So, and other things, I mean, one of my friends who I write about, Emily, who actually is still a dancer, when I first connected with her 3 or 4 years ago, she was in a pretty dark place. She wasn't working. She had just had, she'd had hip surgery that she hadn't really recovered from. She was sort of living at home and not sure what she was going to do. And she also felt sure that, I mean, she was in her late 20s. Like she felt like her best years were as a dancer were past her. And then actually, like when she was 30, she got an amazing job dancing at the Met Opera. So she's, I think people have kind of landed in, it ended up being a bit more hopeful than I think I thought it might be when I started writing.
That's good.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with your body like these days?
I think it's pretty good. I'll take a ballet class from time to time. There are like positive things that I feel like I took from ballet in regards to how I relate to my body. Like it still physically feels good to do the movements, but at the same time, the environment of a ballet class can be kind of triggering. So I'll only do that like once every month or two. But yeah, I mean, I like running and I'm on ClassPass, so I found other substitutes that are less all-encompassing. But it's still the kind of thing where I'm like, I don't know if you're familiar with Strava, this app that tracks your runs. Like I still kind of steer clear of like things that can make you really obsessive. Like I really don't have an Apple Watch or like a Fitbit or anything.
Got it. I feel the phone like records everything for me when I run, the rare times that I run anymore. But
I didn't know that there was a step count feature until someone told me about it. And then once I knew about it, I could not stop checking it. So, I wish no one had ever told me about it.
Oh, sorry. Well, good thing I didn't just ruin it now. No, I don't look at it for steps because that's too depressing. I barely like walk 5 feet a day, but I like to feel some sort of accomplishment of like how far I ran, not like the steps, but sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I must have run like 4 miles and it'll be like 2.2. Like what? So what do you do when you're not working on books like this and taking the occasional dance class? Like what's the crux of your life like?
I mean, the book has been pretty consuming lately. I mean, I also do some journalism still. That's where I started my writing career. So especially in these like little periods post-book, that's usually what I go back to. It's nice to have some little quick hit things, get something up that's short term. But yeah, just kind of reading and writing and working and stuff.
How did you, I mean, it sounds like the book, given all of the iterations it went through, could have been, I mean, was that stressful? Like, did you enjoy the process or how did you feel now, like looking back on the whole writing piece of it?
Yeah, I mean, another big part of the book was there was still like a pretty heavy research component. So I went back and read, a ton of like dancers' memoirs and books about the history of ballet. And that was actually really fun because when I was doing ballet, we did very little of that. So it was interesting to like read a sort of like short history of ballet and actually like be surprised by a lot of it. Like there were really, especially I grew up in the SAB New York City ballet world. So I did know a lot about Balanchine, but I knew very little about like dancers and choreographers anywhere else. I mean, I wrote most of this book during COVID lockdown. So honestly, it was nice to feel like I had some like a project. It felt very optimistic to work on something that would like come out in the future. So that was nice. But yeah, I mean, I actually did. I'm a total nerd and I love doing the research stuff, but it was fun to also do the like interpersonal stuff and like I would like go have a 2-hour dinner with an old friend who I hadn't talked to since we were 15, but also record the dinner. And yeah, I mean, I think it was, and then there was also the personal stuff was like, I went back to my childhood bedroom and was like digging out my old diaries from under the bed and, talking to my parents about their memories. It was, I mean, my first book was about the science of dreaming. And I would say that was much harder. Like I had to actually go, read books about biology and psychology and interview scientists and stuff. This was pretty fun.
What is your next project going to be?
Well, I'm not sure. My two books have been very different from each other, I'll say that. And I think my third book will also be a different genre.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. I was reading to my son last night, and I was like, in the middle of it, I was like, I really want to write a book like this. And he's like, did the character just say that, or are you saying that? And I was like, no, I'm saying that. Like, that's what I would really like to do if I had unlimited time, is like, just keep writing for my kids at their ages, just so that they'd always have something to read. But anyway, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, as you try different genres, I'm like, that sounds interesting, sort of like intellectually fun to give it a shot.
I mean, it might be more like useful if I did a consistent thing that I could like take my readers from one book to the next. But
whatever.
Yeah,
readers are pretty adaptable, I think. Any advice to aspiring authors?
I mean, I feel like I had a kind of weird path where like I didn't study English or writing. I studied archaeology, and then I went into journalism. And when I sold my first book, like I actually had never written anything longer than an article. This was a pretty big leap. But I think that the main way I've learned, I mean, other than, I've been fortunate to have great editors. I have a community of writer friends, but really just reading. I think that's just the biggest thing, and reading the type of thing that you think you might want to make. I mean, one book that was like sort of formative for me as I was starting to think about, what could a book about dance look like, was, I don't know if you're familiar with the book The Lonely City by Olivia Lang, but it's a kind of like hybrid memoir, research-based kind of criticism book where it's about, the memoir strand is about Olivia Lang moving from London to New York for a relationship that then ends, and it's about being lonely in a foreign city. And then she kind of uses that she goes to museums and looks at art that deals with loneliness. So then she kind of gets into these like biographies of artists and her, like criticism of the art or interpretations of the art. It's a really beautiful book. But yeah, I think there were a handful of books like that kind of helped me think about like how to structure this. Yeah. So I guess reading.
Amazing. That's great advice. Alice, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on Moms No Time to Read Books. I really think you're a great writer. I love the way you write and your whole style, and, sort of like mix of emotion and analysis. And it's like, I don't know, it was great. I really love the way you write.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.